Welcome to the History Stories podcast. Are you ready for a wild ride?
Always.
Excellent. Because today, we're taking you on a historic road trip to Prague. And trust me, this is not your typical sightseeing tour. We're talking about a recurring event so strange, so bizarre, it might just leave you speechless.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Defenestration.
Out the window.
Precisely. The act of throwing someone out of a window.
I mean, it's not subtle, is it?
Not at all. And in Prague, it wasn't just a one-time thing.
Multiple defenestrations.
Plural. More than one. And each one had huge repercussions, shaking up the political landscape, changing the course of history.
High stakes, unexpected violence, and maybe a touch of the absurd.
You've got it. So buckle up, the learner, as we dive headfirst into the world of Prague's defenestrations.
This historic road trip is all about understanding not just what happened, but why it mattered. We'll be exploring the why behind these events, how they resonated in their time, and what echoes we still hear today.
Our trusty history books and uncovered sources are our roadmap for this journey.
We'll dig into the details, the juicy bits, the stories behind the stories.
Two major stops on this trip, two defenestrations that shook Prague and beyond.
Think of it like a two-course meal of historical chaos.
First up, we have the appetizer of 1419.
Just a little taste of things to come.
They will dig into the main course of 1618. This one's a real game changer.
With some unexpected twists, I'd wager.
Absolutely. So shall we start with that appetizer? Back in 1419.
Let's set the scene. It's July 30th, 1419, Prague's new town hall. The city is a tinderbox of religious tension. You've got the Hussites, followers of Jan Hus, and they are not happy.
They felt their religious rights were being violated, and some of their people had even been imprisoned by the Catholic town councilors.
Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Now, enter Jan Hilivsky, this charismatic, fiery Hussite preacher. He leads a massive procession towards the town hall. Imagine a sea of people fueled by religious fervor and a sense of injustice. Inside the town hall, we have the Catholic councilors and the burgomaster probably starting to feel a little uneasy.
I'd say so. So what sparked the actual defenestration?
The Hussite procession arrives, demanding the release of their imprisoned brethren.
Reasonable enough, right?
You'd think so. But negotiations break down, things get heated, and then, according to our sources, a stone is thrown from the town hall towards the procession. Some accounts even suggest that it might have hit a sacred object.
Provocation.
Talk about a powder keg. The crowd erupts, they storm the town hall, and in this moment of absolute frenzy, they find those councilors and, well, let's just say they gave those officials a very sudden change of scenery.
7 of them, according to our sources, tossed right out the windows.
To their decks.
Mob justice, Prague style.
Brutal, chaotic, and entirely unplanned. Our history books make it clear that this wasn't some calculated political maneuver. It was raw, unbridled fury, fueled by deep-seated religious tensions. And the consequences were immediate and far-reaching. This event ignited the Hussite Wars, a series of bloody conflicts that would engulf Bohemia for years to come.
So you have to wonder, did this first defenestration set a precedent? Did it establish this, shall we say, unconventional method of political problem-solving in Prague?
A chilling thought, isn't it?
Certainly gives a new meaning to throwing the bums out.
Now, fast forward about 200 years to 1618, where we encounter our second defenestration, the main course, if you will.
And if the first one was an appetizer, this one's a full-blown feast of political and religious drama.
The scene is set at Prague Castle on May 23, 1618. Our history books tell us that tensions between the Protestant Bohemian estates and their Catholic Habsburg rulers were reaching a boiling point.
A real powder keg situation brewing.
At the heart of the conflict was the Letter of Majesty, issued in 1609. It was supposed to guarantee religious freedoms for Protestants in Bohemia. However, the Protestants felt that Emperor Matthias, and especially his heir, Ferdinand, were chipping away at those freedoms.
Specifically, the Protestants were outraged by the halting of Protestant church construction on royal lands.
They saw this as a blatant violation of their rights, a direct attack on the Letter of Majesty. It was a betrayal, and they weren't going to let it stand.
Entered the defenestrators, a group of angry Protestant nobles led by Count Thurn. And on the receiving end of their fury were 2 imperial regents representing the Habsburg crown. Wilhelm Slavata of Chlum and Kachomberg, and Yaroslav Barita of Martinice, both staunch Catholics.
And let's not forget their secretary, Philip Fabricius, who, through no fault of his own, got caught in the crossfire.
On that fateful day, the Protestant nobles stormed the Bohemian chancellery at Prague Castle, where the regents were meeting.
They put those regents on a very impromptu trial. accusing them of violating the letter of majesty.
Yeah, and their verdict?
Guilty. And the sentence. You guessed it. Defenestration. All three men, Slavata, Martinez, and the unfortunate Fabricius, were hurled out of a window, 70-foot drop, to what they surely thought would be certain death.
70 feet.
A long way down. But here's where things take a truly bizarre turn.
They survive.
They did. Bruised, battered, and probably utterly terrified but alive.
How is that even possible?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And their survival became this massive point of contention, a propaganda battleground between Catholics and Protestants.
Of course it did.
The Catholics, naturally, proclaimed it a miracle, a sign of divine intervention. God had protected his faithful servants. But the Protestants had a different, more earthly explanation.
Let me guess. Dung?
You got it. They spread the story that the three men landed in a giant pile of dung, cushioning their fall. Now, our history books and uncovered sources cast a bit of doubt on whether there was actually a convenient dung heap of that magnitude beneath the window. It seems likely that this was a bit of Protestant spin, a way to poke fun at the Catholic narrative.
Clever. But regardless of what they landed on, the fact remains that they survived a 70-foot fall. So how do we explain this seemingly impossible feat?
Well, our history books offer a few theories. First, the terrain beneath the window wasn't flat pavement. It sloped downwards, which would have lessened the impact.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything else?
They also speculate that the area might have contained softer earth, maybe some bushes or garden debris, offering a bit of cushioning. Plus, people in those days wore layers of heavy clothing, which could have provided some padding.
Right. Every little bit helps.
And of course, there's always the element of sheer dumb luck. Sometimes people survive falls that seem unsurvivable.
A bit of fate mixed in.
Exactly. So it seems the most plausible explanation is a combination of physics, clothing, a bit of a luck, and maybe a few strategically placed bushes.
So less divine intervention, more fortunate circumstances.
Pretty much.
Sure.
But regardless of how they survived, the impact of this defenestration was undeniable. Our sources are very clear about this. This event was the spark that ignited the 30 Years' War, one of the most devastating conflicts in European history.
Europe in 1618 was a tinderbox. The Protestant Reformation had fractured the continent along religious lines, and the Holy Roman Empire was a complex web of competing interests. The defenestration threw all of that into chaos.
The Protestant nobles, emboldened by their actions, formed their own government in Bohemia, deposing Ferdinand and offering the crown to a Protestant prince.
A bold move.
The Habsburgs, of course, weren't going to take this lying down.
Yeah.
Emperor Ferdinand II, seeing this as both a rebellion and a religious affront, rallied his Catholic allies.
And boom, all hell breaks loose.
Exactly. And so began the 30 Years' War, a conflict that would reshape Europe, leaving millions dead and redrawing political and religious boundaries.
The defenestration wasn't just a local event, it had ripple effects across the entire continent.
Absolutely. And the word defenestration itself became forever linked to Prague, a symbol of its tumultuous history and its unique approach to conflict resolution.
Prague. Come for the architecture, stay for the defenestrations.
But on a serious note, the defenestrations of Prague offer us a fascinating glimpse into the power of religious and political tensions, the unpredictable nature of history, and the surprising ways in which seemingly isolated events can have massive, long-lasting consequences.
It's a reminder that history is full of these bizarre, often violent turns.
And that sometimes, even a 70-foot fall can have a surprisingly happy ending, depending on your definition of happy, of course.
Dung heaps aside, it's a story that sticks with you, isn't it?
Now, our history books and uncovered sources also offer some fascinating trivia about these defenestrations. For example, did you know that the secretary, Philip Fabricius, was later ennobled by Emperor Ferdinand II with the title von Hohenfall, which means of high fall?
You can't make this stuff up.
It's almost too perfect, isn't it? And Willem Slavata, one of the defenestrated regents, actually wrote memoirs detailing the event from his perspective.
A first-hand account.
Exactly. But of course, we have to take his account with a grain of salt, given his strong Catholic beliefs and his desire to portray the event as divine intervention.
Always consider the source, right?
Absolutely. Our sources also mention a third defenestration, a much later and darker event in 1948, when Jan Masaryk, the Czechoslovak foreign minister, was found dead below his bathroom window. The official ruling was suicide, but many believe he was murdered by the communist secret police.
A chilling echo of those earlier events.
It seems that the association between Prague and defenestration is hard to break, even centuries later.
It's become a part of the city's historical fabric, for better or worse.
So, the learner, as we wrap up this historic road trip, you're left with a few questions for you to ponder. What stands out to you most from these stories? Does the idea of defenestration as a political tool shock you, or does it make a strange sort of sense given the context of these times? And how do you make sense of the varying narratives surrounding the 1618 defenestration, from divine intervention to fortunate landings? These are just a few of the many questions that history throws our way.
And that's what makes it so fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely. If this historic road trip has sparked your curiosity, we encourage you to dive deeper into the sources, explore the history of the Hussite Wars, the Holy Roman Empire, or even architectural details of Prague Castle.
There's a whole world of historical intrigue out there waiting to be discovered.
And here's a final thought to leave you with. In today's world, where information travels at lightning speed and opinions are often sharply divided, how can seemingly small actions, even bizarre ones like defenestration, have such a profound impact, shaping the course of history in ways we might never fully anticipate? And what role do narrative and propaganda play in how we understand these events, both in their time and centuries later?
It's a reminder that history is a conversation, a constant reinterpretation of the past through the lens of the present.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the defenestrations of Prague. Share your thoughts, rate the History Stories podcast, and be sure to follow for more captivating stories from the wilder side of history.
Until next time, keep those windows closed, or at least be mindful of who's standing near them.
And keep exploring the world of flash culture.